Okay. Hey, Diane. Welcome to my podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, at least virtually, face to face.
It's a pleasure to meet you too.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to learning about your current role and or the nonprofit that you work for, Envisioning Access, and what they do. But before we jump into that, do you mind telling me a bit about your background? What kind of led you into the nonprofit space, or did you start off in sort of this a similar field, helping out people with disabilities?
I've always, most of my career I have been in the not-for-profit space. I didn't initially start in the specific disabilities world. It's been mainly human services and social services. I was fortunate. I got to work for two big YMCAs, so one in Boston and one in Providence. I worked for a big healthcare system. Earlier in my career, I worked in central Massachusetts at a time when healthcare systems were merging. And I loved healthcare because, it's everything. It's and you see both good and bad, but I was part of a system that merged with another system. So for me, I was young then and I could see what was happening and how the systems were working. I learned a lot about how to work with unions. I worked with two fascinating boards, amazing doctors. So I was able to see all that stuff. And when you work in healthcare, you see everything. You see the joy of babies being born, you see older adults, you see disabilities. And I think that when I saw all that, that was something that to me was exciting. Before working for Envisioning Access, as I said, I was always in the not-for-profit, but I had the pleasure of working for the Roger Williams Park Zoo. So I got my animal experience, and that was a lot of environment and cultural. So I've had a pretty varied not-for-profit experience, but it's always been in the not-for-profit world, being able to see the impact that these organizations make on people's lives.
Yeah, no, I can already feel your passion coming through about this space that definitely helps to motivate yourself, but also to motivate others, and I'm sure that's a big part of your role at Envisioning Access is motivating people and towards a common movement, towards a common goal. You mentioned about how the medical systems were combining. This is not specifically on topic with Envisioning Access, but it's something that I've wondered, having been in the dental tech space, which is happening right now in dental. They're all merging into under private equity companies. Did you notice, did the care improve or get worse with the mergers? And also, how was it working in the system after those mergers?
I don't know that I can form an opinion of if it got better or worse. I
Sure.
think that this was a while ago. This was at the beginning. This was, I'm going to show my age. This was in the mid 90s. This was happening. And so it was at the beginning of these mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think for the communities that were being affected, they felt it was worse because they felt like they were losing care. Now, they were two cities that were next to each other. So I can't tell you whether I think it was better or worse. And I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you that. I
Sure.
suppose for systems and to save money, maybe it was, that's what it was all about. So I don't know. I think in the long run, the system has survived, and it was in Central Mass. So the system that I worked for was ultimately scooped up by the UMass system, and I would bet now they're doing great because the UMass medical system is a great system.
Yeah, no, I from some people I hear that what he kind of alluded to, there might be like not as good of a doctor-patient relationship. It's more treated like a business. But then on the other hand, then I talked to some providers or even hospital operators, and they say that they appreciate working with kind of a system that has integrated records and everything, so you don't have to have that data inconsistency issues when going from practice to practice. So yeah, I guess there are trade-offs, but hopefully it all evens out and we can get some good healthcare there. But yeah, transitioning onto Envisioning Access now. So do you mind just telling me about just what is the mission for Envisioning Access, and then what is your role there?
Okay, so the mission of Envisioning Access is to collaborate with tech startups and universities to spur the development of new assistive technology for the benefit of people who are living with physical disabilities. And the purpose is for those assistive devices to get people back to work. So economic freedom for higher education and also to alleviate isolation. Folks who are living with physical disabilities, whether it's from an accident and you have a spinal cord injury, or you may have a chronic disease like multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease, at any age, you could find yourself with a chronic disease or have an accident anywhere from, we work with adults 18 plus. So from 18 to 98, we want folks to make sure they have economic freedom. You could be 22 and all of a sudden you discover you have MS, but you still want to get a college degree or a graduate degree. We want these assistive technologies to enhance your life so that you can carry on the way you want to live your life. My role at Envisioning Access is the executive director, so that I work with the staff so that we look for tech startups that we can work with and we can support. And we also look for the investment so that we can we can help this tech startup basically, but we're also, this is really important. We work within the disability community to find folks who will test the new emerging products, because we don't want any of these products to get out on the market and then be useless. If you think of some of the things you use every day, they are products that were originally made for the disability community. People text. Well, that was originally for the hearing impaired community. If you use an electric toothbrush, and this is one of my favorites because a lot of us, and especially you're in the dental community, my dentist said the same thing. Use an electric toothbrush. It's better for your teeth. Well, that was originally invented because you might have trouble if you have arthritis or you can't use your hands as well. But there are a lot of really great products that, whether you're able-bodied or you're disabled, that we're all using, that probably somebody tested that was disabled and now we're all using it. But don't put products out. We want to test the stuff, or we want our companies to test the product before it gets out on the market. And so that's one of the big things that we do.
Got it. Yeah. No, that's such a great point about how innovating according to try to solve problems from a disability often does lead to kind of a very creative thinking, and also it's a way to enhance someone's capabilities that may have a disability in one area, but then it turns out it does the same for anyone that wants to improve their skills in that space, even if they don't have a disability, right? And that's another example that comes to mind is I think Alexander Graham Bell, even when he was inventing the telephone, right? He tried to, what he was trying to do was make a device for a family member that was I think maybe deaf, right? And and then he ended up creating the telephone. So there you go. That's a pretty big invention there to add to the list. So when you partner with startups, you mentioned physical disabilities. What do you guys what's within your definition of that? Is it anything that I guess, is it stuff that's more on a larger level, like if someone has a missing limb, or does it also include stuff on a smaller level if someone has like an immunity issue or something like that?
For us, it's always been, so we're almost 50 years old. We were founded in 1979. So it's a mobility disability. And you know what? We're pretty flexible. We have been working with organizations that also deal with hearing loss or blind, low vision. But primarily what we've always done is work with folks who have mobility disabilities. So, trouble walking, or maybe no mobility at all, like you have a spinal cord injury and you have no mobility. Folks who have Parkinson's, ALS, multiple sclerosis, mainly mobility issues. And because that's what we have always worked in.
And I noticed you said it's only for adults. Is that because is it sort of a different space to be able to provide mobility for kids because they're growing, so things are changing? You can't have a consistent prosthetic, or is there another reason?
When the organization was founded, it was primarily founded for adults. And at least in the last 5.5 years I've been there, we have not expanded to include children. Whether in the future we look at that, that's up for discussion and for our board to do. But the organization has always catered to the 18 plus.
Got it. And so you mentioned also how you guys will try to or will test a product to make sure that it is in fact creating good mobility for the customers? How does that work? So when you first partner up with a startup and they have some kind of new mobility solution, what kind of steps do you guys go through in that partnership?
So this is the part that's fairly new.
Okay,
Right
yeah.
now, we're still talking to some companies and we're still making inroads into disability organizations to say, would you partner with us? We would have to follow some protocols that we would obviously, and we're doing some fundraising around this. There would be compensation for testing, because, when people don't want to volunteer. What we have done in the past, there have been some products that we have tested. We have a couple of folks who have volunteered just to see how the process would work. But as we move into the future, we'll have protocols and we will have set standards and set compensation. Now, we're not talking at least at the beginning, hundreds of people, but it will depend on the product, what the startup is looking for as we move into the future.
Yeah, and yeah, let's go into a bit of that context. So you guys started off working with monkeys as therapeutic service animals, right? And then so that was sort of your service for many years. Then now you guys are transitioning into a more tech or AI or kind of tech oriented non for profit that still assists people, but we're using technology. Do you mind giving me a bit of the history there and how that transition came about?
So the organization started in '79. The woman who started the organization was working with a group called Paralyzed American Veterans. I'm not sure how she settled exactly on working with monkeys, but she did, and she got a grant. And the monkey they settled on was the capuchin monkey.
Okay.
And the capuchin is a really smart monkey. It's a New World monkey. It's a very smart monkey. And I think some of the first monkeys that she worked with, at least the first couple, were they came from laboratories, and she paired a monkey up with a gentleman who was paralyzed, and that relationship lasted a long time. The organization then bred monkeys, and they trained the monkeys do tasks for individuals. It was primarily folks, though not all of them, living with spinal cord injuries. There were some others who had MS, but they trained them to do things. And it was mainly in the 80s, the 90s, the early part of the 2000s.
Yeah.
They would do things like, for instance, push your glasses back up. They could change the channel with the remote. Well, remember, in the 80s, folks didn't have microwave ovens, but as the microwave came in, they could, I guess, hit the buttons. If your arms were on the wheelchair and your arm fell off the wheelchair, some of them were strong enough to put your arm back, but it was a lot of tasks. Over time, the monkeys became companions as well because people got very attached. However, in 2011, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, said dogs are service animals. Sometimes you can use a miniature horse for therapeutic reasons, but only dogs.
Oh, really? Interesting. I didn't know that.
And this was after doing some research. And so the organization was faced with what should we do? And when I came in 2020, as a group, we worked together to say the vision will be to collaborate with tech startups. And because I think folks now with the technology we have want to go back to work. Nobody wants to be dependent. I mean, and there are circumstances when you can't go back to work or go back to school. But with all the technology emerging, I mean, you and I are doing an interview and we're in two separate states.
Yeah.
So I think the pivot that we're making, that the board and staff worked on together these past 5 years, is really a move that will take us into the future. We will always honor the legacy of those primates that really set us going, and there's some protocols that will follow, but we are excited about this move into the future.
Yeah, no, with the service monkeys, I could imagine that a big part of it was that bond that we create. I mean, you see videos I've seen, recently or over the years of monkeys. There's so many of the things that they do are so human like and are very relatable. So I could see that being a deep bond that the patients would form with them, and that
Right.
in itself would create a lot of good therapy for them. But so when you guys decided to do the transition, how does that work for a nonprofit? Of course, it's not like I've never worked for a nonprofit. I've done some volunteer stuff, volunteering services, but I've never full time worked at a nonprofit. So how does that work? Is there a board that decides we're going to change the mission or not change the mission, but maybe the means by which you achieve the mission?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between the for-profit and the nonprofit is that the money from a nonprofit goes back into the nonprofit. I mean, a for-profit, you have stocks and bonds. I mean, you have all that stuff.
Right.
So it's still, and I know it depends on who you are, but a nonprofit is still, you have to make money. You make it in a different way, but you
Sure.
still have salaries and health care for the employees. You still have to, in our case, we have a building. We still have to keep up the building. So we're still running a business. But I think first of all, we haven't changed the mission in the sense that it's still quality of life services for
Right.
people living with disabilities. And so the founder through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it's always been focused on disabilities. The monkeys were a means to provide services for somebody living with a physical disability. And I think when we set out to make the transition, the board and the staff and other stakeholders, primarily the people living, our recipients and others who were living with disabilities, which were the major voice in all this, sat together. Now, I'm not going to tell you they calmly sat together because everybody has an opinion, but we did some brainstorming and really explored this. What do people need? And through these brainstorming sessions, what did come out was, we need to get back to work. We want to go to school. How do we do this? Because we love those monkeys, but the monkey's not going to get us back to work.
Right.
The monkey was a great companion. We didn't have the capabilities in the 80s and the 90s that we have now in the mid 2020s. And I think, we were, as an entity, Envisioning Access, board, staff, clients, other stakeholders, very thoughtful about how we came to this conclusion. And all of us also have personal stories to tell. People who in our lives my father had multiple sclerosis. I know what it was like to grow up in a house like that. Not that, I'm not going to tell you some awful story, but if he had had the technology, his life would have been different than it was. So that's how we came to that conclusion. And I really applaud those thoughtful discussions to help us get where we are going today.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's good that that often is a lot of people in the health space. They have some kind of a family member or themselves that have been afflicted with some illness. I know even my own family, since COVID, some family members were affected. So it makes a big difference if you've experienced that firsthand. You start to realize very quickly what the priorities in life are versus making more money or that kind of thing. But yeah, that's good to know that you guys have a cohesive mission and down to the individual level, not just like a broader company mission. And when you first got into this space, did you have a mentor, someone that at Envisioning Access kind of showed you like what the mission is, how you guys do things, how you I guess the day to day?
I don't know if I had a mentor so much. I think our board chair was very kind to me and, helped me out a lot. He's been there a while, so he was pretty helpful. The board was pretty good. I think for me, and I've been in the field for a while, so I
have experience.
But I think the board was very helpful. I think what drives me personally, as I just said, is having come from a home that my father had MS and seeing how my father dealt with it and my mother as the primary caregiver. Now, I came from a really happy, crazy house with a big I had one sister and we had lots of relatives and crazy grandparents and all of that. But the day-to-day that they experienced, and I try to remember that when I deal with, on the client side, the person with the disability and then their caregiver, whether it's their caregiver is a parent, a spouse, a sibling, the best friend, because I know as the daughter of someone what it was like. And that's what I think, as much as I appreciated, the board and how they helped me at the beginning, it's remembering that every single day that I go to work, I remember how they were and what they experienced.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I remember that so that we provide the technology so that, they can get on with their lives. And I think that's what drives me daily.
Yeah, it really is invaluable to have that firsthand experience of something, of a pain point, or in this case, a family member that's afflicted by disability. Because you really don't, I mean, no matter how much if someone describes a problem to you, it's not the same as feeling that problem firsthand. And so it definitely makes a big difference when trying to solve it, to know what it feels like to be on the other end of that. And then you'll have a much better idea of what it means to solve it.
Yeah. And I think my father would have really embraced the technology, and he would have loved the fact that I'm talking all about him. My mother would be aghast that I've even, but I think he would have. I mean, he was the wrong generation, but I don't know. I really believe our mission is speaking to, first of all, the tech startups, and there's so many people out there, scientists and developers, both able-bodied and disabled, that are building this technology.
Yeah.
And we want to talk to all of them.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, in the realm of mobility, there is so many companies that are starting robotics companies that I'm sure many of the skill sets and functionalities that they're building would be very helpful for people with disabilities. Whether it's just having that understanding of how body mechanics works will definitely go a long way to help develop solutions, I think, for people with disabilities. But you also mentioned how important it is that the caretaker is able to take care of the person with the disability. Is it just as important, or is it also something that you guys are thinking about to provide solutions for the caretaker to better take care of the patient, or are you focused more on solutions for the patient?
Well, I think the technology that we're looking at is the solution for the individual with the disability. However, if the primary caregiver has to be comfortable with that technology, because they may be leaving someone at home for many hours in the day while they go off to work or school. And they also have to be. So, for instance, one of the things that we learned by working with the monkeys was the monkey would be trained and placed in a home. Well, you didn't just drop the monkey off and walk away. You couldn't. I mean, you're talking about an animal.
Right.
So the trainer would work for a couple, I forget how many weeks, but they would take the monkey to the home. The caregiver also was caring for the monkey. I mean, it's a little different with technology, but so there were many steps. So they would spend some time. They would make sure would get used to the monkey, and the family would get used to the monkey. And then once that was accomplished, and the trainer came back to Boston, they would follow up, phone call after phone call after phone call. It's probably not quite as complicated with technology, but we say the same thing. We're not going to just drop off a piece of technology, or if it's an app, just put it on your phone and walk away. We're going to make sure you are used to it. But for the caregiver, we want to make sure you also understand the technology, because, you may have to use it. You may have to. But are you comfortable leaving your loved one at school with their computer for 10 hours? Are you comfortable walking out the door and going off to work for a couple of hours? Or what happens if you have a meeting or your car breaks down? So, and how do you feel about all this? We want to make sure everybody's comfortable, because they are taking care of somebody. So we want to make sure everybody's involved and everybody understands what's going on. So they are very important in this process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's so there's so much that technology is able to do more and more, but at the same time, there's so many things that human beings can do that are tough for technology to do, and so it's important to preserve the caretaker's time if they're constantly trying to fix some device and not able to spend the time doing the tasks that they can do. Then of course it won't make sense for them. So I think that definitely is a smart thing to prioritize. To think, yeah, you basically have two users, so to speak, if we're speaking in a startup language.
Right.
That the person with disability plus the caretaker. So it's important to keep both of them in mind. And what do you see ultimately as the vision for envisioning access? So is it for a nonprofit? I mean, are you trying to grow into a larger entity, like and service more people with more disabilities, or is the goal just to focus on a certain niche?
Well, if I had my way, it'd be everything. I think we would like to be able to work to serve as many people as possible. I think for us, we would like to be able to, we haven't found a terminology other than a commercialization test bed, but to provide a home for as much disability tech as possible. I mean, we have to start at the beginning and be able to provide a home where people can work on their, almost like an incubator for disability tech. I don't know if that's exactly what we will end up doing, but that's where I'd like to head. We're probably talking mainly robotics with embodied AI, but a place where folks can test that technology and then we can work with them to get it out on the market. But that's what I would like. I mean, my dream is to see some of these robots going into homes where they can do some of the work that the caregiver is doing to free up the caregiver to spend more time with their loved one. You know, I mean, I'm watching all this stuff on humanoid robots and will it happen soon? I don't know. But I have a friend who has MS.
Okay.
And one day he was teasing his wife and he said, I'm going to get a robot. And she said, great, go get one.
Right.
But, they're a little older and he's at a point where sometimes he has trouble putting on his shoes. Well, they would love to just be able to travel and do the things they want to do now, take their robot with them to help him, maybe put on his shoes or stand up or I don't know, button his shirt or do the things he needs to do.
Right.
And then it frees the caregiver up to do the fun stuff, travel, just be together. And I hope we come to that pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that vision, the first thing that comes to mind is what do you guys see is the most common and most I guess restricting pain point or disability that could be solved. I mean, so like in other words, if there's a certain if there's a certain problem that is affecting the most people, then if we prioritize that one, of course, then we can as quickly as possible get to that point of helping many people. Is there a certain disability that's very common and very debilitating? Yeah.
That's a good question. I think as society ages and I forget the statistic is by 20. Now I've heard, I have to look it up again. I think it's by 2030 or 31, there'll be more folks over 65 than a younger population.
Wow.
I think you're going to see more mobility issues, probably. I don't know, but you'll see things like, arthritis but I don't know if there's one. I think
No, that's a great point though. Everyone ages. So that probably is the, most common,
right.
Lack of mobility is when we get older. Yeah.
Right. And I think now we're all staying healthier longer. I think people, just because somebody turns 65 doesn't mean they're instantly going to be old.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right. People are working longer. They're living longer. They're healthier longer. But I don't know if there's, something that I would say, oh, I see more of this than that. I don't know. Yeah. But I think you're going to see more mobility issues because society's getting older. That's a guess. Now, someone with an MD at the end of their name might tell you something different. That's a guess on my part. So, I mean, Don't quote me on that.
No problem at all. Yeah. So I mean, a big part of as people get older, if someone's healing from an injury, is just staying active. Like, is that something that you guys also think about, like better devices to help people do like different forms of physical therapy, or is it more about focusing on restoring the capabilities that someone had through like physical technology, like robotics?
For us, it's more about the technology
Yeah.
that's going to get you back to work or
Right.
school or out of isolation. So
Gotcha.
that's what we're focusing on. If someone comes to us and says, I'm thinking about this type of technology and it's all around getting you more mobile to run a race. I think we'd look at it, but we really are trying to stick to those three core issues. But social isolation, that might fit in with something to do with physical fitness because people want to engage in the community. So we would look at that. But so we would, as long as it fits into one of those three areas, we'd look at it.
Got it. And so Envisioning Access was started in Boston, right? How was what is it like starting a company in Boston? Of course, there's probably the most famous, at least over the past decade or so, robotics company was out of Boston Dynamics, right? So there's of course a lot of smart people and very tech oriented people in Boston. Has that overall, how's it been having a nonprofit in Boston?
I think now I can't speak for the person who started it in
Right.
in 79. For us now, being in Boston is fabulous. We have been able to interact with some of the universities. I have to say Northeastern has been a tremendous friend.
Oh, really?
We've done some work with the Institute of Experiential Robotics. They have been really so supportive of us from the beginning. So they're one of them. We've had some contact with some of the other universities, but I have to say Northeastern has really, especially the Institute of Experiential Robotics, has gone out of their way to support us. So we're very lucky to be in Boston. I think we're surrounded by technology. So you have folks you can call and look at. I think there's a lot going on in Massachusetts. We've been able to at least have conversations with the Mass Tech Collaborative, Mass Robotics, at least talk to folks and say, this is what we're doing. This is where we're headed. What do you think? Yeah, to be in Boston at this point is very exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that sounds like a great partnership that you guys have with Northeastern. So how does that take place? So they have a lab? Are they testing out different robotic solutions with students, or is it also involving like PhD researchers?
We've tried to collaborate on some projects. Sometimes the funding comes through, sometimes it doesn't come through.
Yeah.
There are a couple of professors there that I've been able to tap into for advice. It's that type of thing. If they need folks to test things, they know they can call me. So it's right now, it's a very informal, flexible relationship. One of their professors was on a panel that we needed. I think we hosted something and we had a professor on it. So it's just being able to call somebody up and say, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? Or they say, we're thinking about doing this. Would Envisioning Access be willing to partner or collaborate? We're putting in a grant. So it's that type of relationship. Or even if I call and say, I'm thinking about this, is this wrong? Or am I thinking about robotics in a way appropriate? Because they're the experts in robotics. We're learning. And they'll say yes or no.
Yeah, it's great to have that consultation, and maybe there are some universities here in New York that would also be willing to help. I'll keep my eyes open for anyone that could partner with you guys. That would be great. And what is the space in general like? Are there other nonprofits that are focusing on similar issues, or are there not enough currently?
Hats off to Mass Robotics. They do tremendous work. They're different than us, but it's all robotics. And they do an array of, so like manufacturing, healthcare, they do everything. The disability space is small. A lot of disability work, not-for-profits are more service oriented. So like Easter Seals, the ARC, other groups, they're very service oriented and they need to be. We're focusing more on working with the technology at this point. So we've transitioned from that service to working with the technology. We're pretty unique in what we do. We have also been, while we still tend to do, I mean, obviously we look at traditional fundraising models and continue to do that. We are also looking at social impact investment and have talked to some of those folks in that area, and they are encouraging us to follow what we're doing and to stay in this space, which is really what we wanted to hear and we need to hear. So we are moving into that. So we know there aren't a lot of folks in this space. So that's I don't know whether that's good or bad, but
there's opportunity, but it's
doing this. Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for you guys to help out a lot of people, right. and that's good. And you mentioned some aspects of fundraising. How does it work? I mean, so when you guys are partnering, or when you plan to partner with startups, and say they have is the goal basically, if they have a good new device and it's working to help people overcome a disability, you would then kind of take that to different people that are interested in donating to a good cause, and show them, look, we've helped out this company, assist these people and overcome their disabilities, and then that's where the funding for the non-profit comes from?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. And that's where the social impact, that's who we're talking to, those investors. That's our next big step. So we're talking to some of those folks to say, this is what we're doing. Will you support us? And that's a big shift in how a not-for-profit works. I think it's an exciting shift. It's a futuristic looking shift to say, not that we're going to abandon how a traditional not-for-profit fundraises, but these are tech startups. These are folks who are in this disability space. You know, a couple of you have said to us, yeah, we really want you out there, which is exciting. Now we need to shore up the support here. And that's our next big step. And that to me is really exciting. And some of the staff is really excited about that. So we're in the process of putting all of that together. That's the future of Envisioning Access.
Yeah, no, I agree that is a smart move. I mean, here in New York, I feel there's so many people working on health tech startups that there is really I think this sort of feeling that we've all been getting recently that the U.S. could be a lot healthier than it is. Like, there's a lot of bad stuff in our food. There's our diets maybe aren't the best. I think at some point our expected lifespan went down a bit, which is against the prevailing trend. So I think there's sort of like a movement I can feel of people wanting to create startups to try to solve all these issues, the inefficiencies with insurance even too, and try to really create technical solutions to get around them. So I think it is a well-timed initiative.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We all need to stay healthy, and let's face it, every once in a while you need a cookie, but
nothing wrong with that.
But I do. I think people want to stay healthy. I think, that there's as I said to you earlier, there's so many smart people out there developing this technology. And I think there's a lot of folks who are developing what I'm calling, it's not my phrase, but dual technology, where it can be used for everybody, like the telephone and the electric toothbrush. And that's, this is exciting. This is exciting stuff. And I think in the end, it will make life easier for folks. People don't need more drama in their lives. They can go to Broadway for the drama. Yeah. People just want to do their thing and get on with it. And I think that's what this technology is all about, this assistive technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And another example, modern day example of that sort of strategy of starting off with something that's helpful to people with a disability, and then from there can be helpful for anyone. And that's Neuralink, one of the companies started by Elon Musk, that has a brain implant that allows you to, if you're paralyzed, to say move a cursor on a screen just by thinking about it, which is an amazing thing. Eventually, the idea is that many people might want to use this kind of functionality to interface with computers, which is a whole other topic that's there's definitely a lot of promising things, but also controversial things in that space. But yeah, definitely another example of starting off with strengthening people that have a disability in that space, and then inevitably it turns out everyone's actually able to take advantage of that solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's a promising field. I think Neuralink is a very interesting technology, and I think if you can't move, and that helps you. I mean, you can look at it both ways, but if you can't move and all of a sudden you're moving the screen, I can imagine it's extremely exciting.
Yeah, no, it must be incredibly empowering, and yeah, I know that their first patient was someone who was paralyzed from the neck down, and yeah, he said he felt like an astronaut, being the first one to
Right.
try out some kind of a scientific mission, and there being a lot of risk involved. Who knows what you're implanting something in your brain, so there's a lot of risk, but it's it's an important role to play because it paves the path for other people. And yeah, no, it's definitely an important space. This creating technology, or the problems that are faced by people with disabilities, almost sort of shines a light on where to start developing new technologies, because it ends up being helpful. So it's sort of almost like a clue that this is an interesting space to develop more technology in. And what would you say were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during your time at Envisioning Access?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think as a not-for-profit, fundraising is always an issue. And I think as we transitioned from a service organization to what we're doing now, I have to be honest, we lost some funders because people were upset that we had to stop using the monkey. And first of all, by law, we had to stop training and placing that monkey. And I kept saying the mission of the organization is really quality of life services for folks with disabilities, physical disabilities. But a lot of, there were some foundations that were giving money because we had animals. We're not an animal welfare organization. So that was and still is a bit a real challenge. However, one of our major donors switched right with us, is very supportive. So that counters some of that. But that's a challenge. That's one of the reasons we are so focused on the social impact investing world. I think transitioning an organization is an exciting process, but it's also a challenge because not everybody agrees. As much as we went through a process and people work together, not everybody agrees. And you do lose people who may have been with you for a while. But if the organization is going to survive, you have to make these changes. And this isn't something that's unique to Envisioning Access. There are not for-profits and not-for-profits probably all over the world who are going through this. But I think those were the challenge. The challenge really is around the fundraising and then losing people who may have been with the organization in some way as supporters, as volunteers or whatever, don't agree with how we've moved forward.
Yeah, no, it can be tough. I mean, no matter what decision you make, I mean, it's in our nature that it's always going to be true. There'll be people that will disagree, and so it's sort of a human instinct to kind of balance the perspectives and to have different opinions than the people around you. So that'll always be the case, and so it's as long as I think as long as everyone's listened to and taken into account, but and you're following what seems to be the best decision, which I think with the pace of technology, I think it makes sense what you guys are doing. Of course, I'm from the tech area, so I would say that, but yeah, no, I think that it's a good decision.
Thanks.
And yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the most valuable insights? Say someone else who's trying to either transition a non-for-profit or start a new one day to day. What's some of the most insightful things that you've discovered that would help them out a lot?
Well, after this experience, or as I'm still going through it, have a sense of humor.
Right.
And have some patience, and work closely with your team. And Jenny Rose, I mean, she's like the best. And, if you have a really good team, that's part of the battle. But I think it's having a good team. It's listening to at the beginning and hearing what folks have to say. I think it's it's also, I mean, I'm teasing, but I'm not teasing with saying have a sense of humor, because you really do need a sense of
No,
humor.
I agree completely.
But also in my case, I needed someone to talk to on a regular basis. And
Uh,
sometimes it's someone in the organization, sometimes it's not. And I read this article. This was a couple of years ago, and there was someone who was in my role. He was an ED somewhere, and he said, "Oh, he depended on his spouse." For me, I've been fortunate that my husband is very supportive and just listens. And so you find someone who will be supportive, because when you're going through a transition like this, whether it's a big one or a little one,
yeah.
it's a lot. And even when you have a board that's supportive and a chair, I have a chair that's really supportive and he really listens. He's got his own life that you can't, you're trying to go through it. We're going through it together. You need an outside person to just be able to say, today was terrible or today was great,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so I think just make sure you have a support system around you, because it's a lot to take an organization through a transition. It's really exciting though. It's really exciting, and it's wonderful to see the progress and to see what an organization can do. You don't do it alone. You have this team, and people are working together, but it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it is such a difficult thing to do to lead an organization or to start one. And so for any number of reasons, it's good to have that person to bounce
Yeah.
ideas off of, to give you moral support in tough times, so that you're not, on an island by yourself when things are difficult, because that's incredibly tough. And also to see your blind spots. There's so many things that we maybe focus on one thing and missing another, or because of our and we all have biases. Because of our biases, we miss something. And so it's good to have someone that can kind of check in those blind spots for you, to make sure that you're not missing something. So yeah, I agree, that's important.
Yeah, and I think I do think for anybody who's going, whether it's a huge for-profit company or it's a Envisioning Access, going through a transition. I mean, first, I really, it really has been an interesting process.
Yeah.
But I think you have to, you also have to be mindful of what you're doing and how it's affecting folks. Not everybody's going to agree, and you know that.
Yeah.
But in the end, the audience, the stakeholder or whatever, for Envisioning Access, the most important is the person living with the physical disability. And if
Right.
that's who we have to keep in mind. So we can transition, we can argue, we can, as a board and staff and donors or whatever, our purpose is to make sure that technology serves its purpose to get that person living with a spinal cord injury, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, whatever, back to work, back to school, and out of isolation. And if we haven't accomplished that, then we haven't fulfilled our mission. And I do say every day, if we live for the mission, then we've accomplished our goal. And that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, no, it is important to have that guiding, that North Star, so to speak.
Yes.
Because you get so involved in details when running a business, and
Yes.
so focused on problems that it is easy to kind of get disoriented, or to lose track of what the actual goal is. Even though you're spending so much time to try to achieve it, you forget what it actually is, though, because you're so you're just not it's good to pick your head up above the all of the weeds when you're getting into them, and to look at that North Star and make sure that you're heading in that right direction. And yeah, I think technology, it's general enough where there's still many places you can go. It's not like you guys are restricted to a very niche thing. I mean, technology, there's so many different applications of technology. So as far as people that are interested in going in a different direction, I mean, there's still plenty of directions that you can go. I mean, you really haven't limited yourself that much by pairing with technology, because it has so many different applications and varieties. So I think there's still plenty of room to navigate, room to move around. Yeah, definitely, you guys aren't locked into anything. So
Right.
that's good. All right. Well, Diane, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast here. You're my first non-for-profit guest that I've had on. So yeah, it's great to dive into that and learn how nonprofits work, and to learn more about your guys' mission. It's a great mission. I hope. I've never had a immobilizing injury, but anyone who's had any kind of injury knows that they're incredibly difficult. So to have to be paralyzed or something severe like that, it must be incredibly life-changing. So hopefully there's a life-changing solution to get them back on track.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been great. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm glad I was your first not-for-profit.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.